Hey everyone, let's dive right in. When we think of space exploration, our minds usually jump straight to the triumphs, right? We picture the brilliant physics, the courageous astronauts, and those absolutely incredible milestones of human achievement. But in this explainer, we're actually going to explore the darker, systemic side of getting to the stars, drawing directly on some incredibly revealing source material. We're going to look at the invisible forces that govern these missions long before a rocket ever even makes it to the launch pad.
So what really causes space disasters? When a tragedy occurs, the immediate reaction of the public and the press is to look for a mechanical fault. We just assume it's a busted valve, a computer glitch, or some unavoidable technical failure in a highly complex machine. It's super easy to blame the hardware. But is the hardware the actual root cause?
Well, the crucial point is the true cause is political and institutional pressure. This is the central thesis found throughout all of our source texts today, and it's a recurring, terrifying theme. The most catastrophic failures in the history of spaceflight weren't born in the engineering bay or the assembly line. No, they were born in boardrooms, in political offices, and within the rigid structures of institutions that decided to prioritize external demands over fundamental safety.
Part 1. Soyuz 1, a propaganda tragedy.
In the early days of the Soviet space program, three main ingredients brewed a historical tragedy. First, there was immense political pressure coming directly from the Kremlin. Second, the fundamental goal of the mission wasn't purely scientific, it was really about securing a major propaganda victory. And third, there was a completely rigid, immovable target, Vladimir Lenin's birthday. The political optics of securing a victory on this specific historical date completely overrode the safety concerns of the engineers. Basically, the deadline was set by politics, not by the readiness of the machine.
200. Let that sink in. During the pre-flight testing of the Soyuz 1 spacecraft, the engineers and technicians identified over 200 technical problems. 200! And these were not minor aesthetic issues. We're talking about serious, documented flaws in a vehicle meant to keep a human being alive in the literal vacuum of space. Yet, the officials pushing for that propaganda victory completely ignored them. The institutional pressure to launch was so absolute that the actual data simply did not matter.
The outcome of ignoring all of that data was the tragic death of cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov. Forcing this mission to proceed despite those 200 known technical flaws led directly to his death. This wasn't just some unavoidable accident in the pursuit of science, it was a conscious choice made by leadership. And tragically, this event established a terrifying historical pattern of institutions prioritizing optics and schedules over human life.
Part 2. Challenger STS-51L, ignoring the engineers.
Now you might be thinking this kind of pressure was just a uniquely Soviet problem during the height of the Cold War, but actually, scratch that, it wasn't just a Cold War issue. Fast forward to the Challenger disaster, and what's really interesting here is the stark, fatal contrast. On one hand, you have engineers warning plainly that freezing temperatures would cause O-ring seals to fail, a hard physics-backed warning. On the other hand, management, who were facing mounting pressure after multiple delays, decided the schedule was somehow more important than the environment.
And this brings us to a devastating reality. NASA management overruled their own engineers. Think about the tragic hubris of that for a second. The leadership explicitly ignored the urgent safety warnings of the very experts who designed, built, and understood the machine. They allowed the institutional pressure of maintaining a launch schedule to completely deafen them to the science, which resulted in the heartbreaking loss of the Challenger and its crew.
Part 3. Columbia STS-107, a fatal culture.
Here, the pressure wasn't a top-down mandate, but a toxic culture of apathy. Let's walk through this horrifying sequence of events together. Step 1. During launch, a piece of foam strikes the shuttle's wing, potentially causing damage. Step 2. The engineers on the ground, doing exactly what they are trained to do, request high-resolution images of the shuttle in orbit to assess the extent of that damage. And Step 3. Shuttle program managers deny those requests. A proactive, perfectly sensible safety measure was completely shut down by institutional bureaucracy.
So, engineers took action, requesting imagery to assess the danger. But the shuttle program managers justified their denial by claiming that even if damage were found, quote, nothing could be done. And this just brilliantly and tragically illustrates the fatal flaw in their culture. They made a massive assumption that shut down the investigation before it even began. This normalization of deviance, accepting unknown risks simply because dealing with them is inconvenient, directly led to the spacecraft's catastrophic breakup during re-entry. Let's move to our final section and see how this builds. Part 4, the cost of compromise, synthesizing the pattern. When we pull all these threads together, the pattern is just undeniable. With Soyuz 1, it was 200 problems completely ignored for Lenin's birthday. With Challenger, it was freezing O-rings ignored to avoid delays. And with Columbia, it was a foam strike ignored due to sheer apathy. Across decades and across entirely different political systems, this is a universal institutional flaw.
Which brings us to this vital quote, exactly as it's phrased in our source material: the fatal impact of political and institutional pressure on mission safety. Our case studies conclusively prove this underlying idea. When we analyze space disasters, we can literally never just stop at the broken seal or the damaged wing. We have to look deeper. We have to look at the human systems, the hierarchies, and the intense pressures that allowed those mechanical failures to be ignored in the first place.
I want to conclude with a provocative thought, because ultimately this isn't just about rockets. When institutional pressure mounts in your world, in your organization or your workplace, who is listening to the engineers? Who is listening to the experts? We've seen the astronomical cost of silencing data in favor of schedules or optics. It's a profound lesson in leadership and culture for all of us. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it leaves you reflecting on how we balance pressure and safety in our